Hi, my name is Kristen Murphy. I'm a career counselor in CSE Career Services, and I also manage the co-op program in the college, along with Professor Kia Bazargan from Electrical Engineering, who's the faculty director of the co-op program. And today we're looking at slides for connecting students with co-ops, which will hopefully help to give you some recommendations for how you can work with students who are interested in a co-op. We'll be going over some features of the co-op program, benefits to students, some enrollment trends that we've seen over the last 5 years, as well as the role of advisor or faculty in helping students to understand what a co-op is and the process for engaging in the program. There's also information about how to connect with me for questions. A couple of features of the co-op that are important to know are that the co-op program is only open to CSE undergraduate students. It's open to students in any department. However, BBE administers their co-ops differently through their own department. So if you work with a student in BBE, you would not refer them to the CSE co-op program. A co-op is 2 semesters of full-time, well-paid work, and by full-time, that needs to be about 40 hours a week. It can be slightly less, but it should aim for 40 hours. And the student earns 2 credits for each semester that they complete through the classes CSE 4896 and 4996. Most of the majors in CSE count those credits as technical elective credits. However, there are some majors such as computer science, chemistry, physics, who count the credits as elective credit only. We know through looking at some data that having a co-op increases the chances of a student getting a job offer after graduation. 100% of our co-op students had a full-time offer within 6 months of graduation, and of those, 63% had a full-time job within 2 months or less of graduation. And that data was compiled from students who graduated from summer 2022 to 2024. Some benefits of a co-op compared with an internship are that because the student is in a co-op a little bit longer than an internship, usually 7 to 8 months, they have the ability to work on projects that are much more in-depth than an internship might allow for, a little bit more meaningful. They can often see a project through to completion because they have such a length of time to be able to work on the project and get exposure to the workplace. So the internship is typically 10 to 12 weeks. The co-op, being longer, the student does get that more in-depth experience. They gain very good experience to put on their resume and can really feel like they're part of the team at their company. They attend team meetings. Students who complete the co-op have commented that they feel like they're treated like an entry-level engineer, and they're often given projects that an entry-level engineer would be given as well. So they get a great sense of the company environment, and then along with their actual co-op experience, because they're enrolled in the co-op courses at the same time, they're able to get exposure to other students in a variety of majors who are also completing a co-op. So students have co-ops at large companies, small companies, there's all kinds of engineering majors, and they can share their stories, experience, and really build a community in that space. A couple of other benefits in terms of wages from the last year, which would be fall 2024 to summer 2026, the average pay was $26 an hour. And you can see the range here on the slide. It really varies, of course, depending on a variety of factors, like the size of the employer, where the employer is located, etc. Again, technical elective credit is typically given during the co-op. Students can earn 4 credits. However, I always advise that students check with their department advisor just to learn how that co-op program could count toward their degree requirements, and so they're not surprised at any point. Another great benefit is that because a student is working full-time 40 hours, they're considered a full-time student, although they're only enrolled in a 2-credit class during each semester. So because they're considered full-time, any scholarships or financial aid that they're receiving that requires they be full-time is not affected. And they also only pay for the amount of credits they're enrolled in. So while they're still considered full-time students, they're not paying 13 credits, they're paying only the 2 credits for the co-op class that they take. When working with students, one of the concerns that students bring is, when will I graduate, and having a co-op delay my graduation. So this information here was compiled from students with a graduation year of 2021 to 2024. And what it shows is that the majority of students, well, roughly 50%, a little more than that, graduate within their 4-year time frame. And you can see that 25%, close to 25% of students will have one additional semester of coursework, and then 20% of students have an additional year, and a very small amount, 4%, graduate in less than 4 years. What determines graduation can be the program itself, with some departments or majors having pretty strict course sequencing. That usually means that the student will graduate in more than 4 years, if that's the case. Or if a student comes into college with credits from high school, then they can often graduate within those 4 years, but still have the ability to do a co-op. In this example 4-year plan, this is from mechanical engineering, who created this plan, like a visual for students to be able to understand the ideal timing for a co-op. And just to give some background, students can start their co-op anytime after they've been admitted to the major. So that is a requirement. The student has to be admitted to the major before they begin their co-op, which normally means that the summer of a student's sophomore year is probably the first opportunity that they could enroll in the co-op program. For some students, they can do it in the spring of their sophomore year if they have credits coming in from high school. But I think the majority of students are doing their co-op sometime in their junior year. Although there's no requirements, they just have to be admitted to the major and to make sure that they complete their co-op credits before they graduate, or by the time they graduate. So in this example for mechanical engineering, this is just showing the co-op example, like how a student would fit a co-op into their plan. As you can see, year 3, the junior year, fall and spring semester courses. Then a student does the co-op class in the summer, and then also decides to take potentially one additional ed course in their senior year. Fall of the senior year, they're taking this second co-op class, and then they have the option to take an additional class as well. As far as enrollment trends, this is what we've seen from 2020 on and to present day. The CSE Career Services acquired the co-op program from the mechanical engineering department right around this time. This also, of course, was around the time when the pandemic was emerging. So we think that that is one reason why our total number of co-op students have, took a big dip from 2020 to 2021. Most likely because of the pandemic and the differences in hiring. But this just gives you a sense of how our numbers have changed over the years. And they've stayed fairly steady since 2021. You can also see that summer, the yellow bar, is prime time for co-ops. That's very common because students are just working full-time during that summer, typically not taking any other classes, and then they often do a fall co-op as well. So most students are doing summer fall co-op. This chart shows our most common majors for the co-op program. This again is when mechanical engineering was managing the co-op program. The numbers were quite high. They've still remained high as far as the majors within the college, but I think since Career Services has taken on ownership of the co-op program, there may be less faculty initiative or encouragement for students to submit a co-op, or there could also be lower numbers of mechanical engineering students. We're not quite sure, but you can still see that in this past year, mechanical engineering is still quite high in the green bar. Another very common major for co-ops is biomedical engineering. And then you can see how the numbers really vary. I think in the 2023 to 2024 is a better example what things are typically looking like. With electrical engineering being pretty strong, computer engineering, chemical engineering, and also computer science. As well as, basic strength. But we can see that mechanical engineering is taken up once again this past year. As far as the eligibility for a co-op, I mentioned this earlier, but a student has to be admitted into their major in order to begin for a co-op. It's a definite requirement. If you're working with a transfer student who is admitted directly into the major and they transfer into CSE, then they're able to apply to a co-op right away, like as soon as their first semester of enrollment in CSE. There's no minimum GPA requirement for a co-op, and students can take additional classes, although it's recommended that students take no more than one additional course a semester, or actually none. And I really try to emphasize that, and as advisors or faculty, you probably want to stress that the student knows their own capacity for how many courses they can take, but since the co-op is 40 hours a week, it doesn't leave a lot of time for additional courses or having a positive work-life balance. Again, co-op requirements, the student must work for 2 semesters. They are normally consecutive semesters. For example, starting in spring 2026, all the way through August of 2026 is like a typical co-op term, or the student might start in May 2026 and go all the way through December 2026. But the semesters can be non-consecutive. It happens, occasionally each year. It's just fine. Students must also work under the supervision of a qualified engineer who can give them some guidance and provide some professional feedback and a performance evaluation. The work needs to be full-time, and then the position has to be related to the student's major. As far as locating a co-op, in the co-op office we do not keep a list of co-op opportunities, and we have no matching system. Other Big Ten universities' co-op programs may have a matching system where someone in a coordinator position like me would be trying to match a student with a particular co-op. I think that had been happening in the past in mechanical engineering, and we've moved away from that. So now the student can fill out the co-op interest form to let us know of their interest, and then we would reach out to the student to set up a meeting, if possible, or to give them some information so they understand how to go forward with the co-op program. But the student is really responsible for finding the co-op on their own. I think Handshake is a very good resource for students. I recommend that they use the keyword co-op in their job search field. They can see co-ops in all states if they want to. They can go to a different state if they'd like to have an experience outside of Minnesota. But the student will find the co-op on their own, interview for it, and then once they get an offer, I would work with them to get them enrolled in the classes. I can always tell students or recommend anyway that they meet with career services staff to look over their resume, or to look, just to help with searching for a co-op. And again, of course, we have a lot of resources on the Career Services website covering co-op search, resumes, interviews, etc. Recommendations for advisors or faculty who are working with students and the student expresses an interest in a co-op, or even if they don't and they're just curious about what they can do to develop some experience, I would recommend having a conversation with students early in their academic planning so they can sequence their courses in an advantageous way in order to complete a co-op. You can always refer to the co-op office at any point with questions, or just refer the student to the co-op office. I'll get that email from them and schedule appointments with students pretty regularly to go over some information. I also wanted to just show the FAQs, frequently asked questions, and some major specific information that can be found at the co-op site. So you can look this over in your departments to understand when a good time would be for a student to have a co-op. So we compile this information from departments. This is what I direct students to look at in addition to speaking with the advisor in their department. It just gives information about how a co-op would best fit into the student's schedule. There's other information as well which you might be interested in. These are questions that we get pretty regularly at a co-op, at the co-op program. International students can actually work in a co-op, and in fact a co-op is one of the only ways that an international student can gain some full-time off-campus work experience after they've been a student for 1 full year. I would normally recommend that students look at the International Student webpage and connect with an advisor in ISSS early to understand what needs to go into their CPT authorization. That I can also help to answer some questions that international students have. The other question that I get pretty regularly is, could I get a co-op position but not take the courses? And the answer is yes. So if you hear of a student who has a co-op, they do not need to enroll in the co-op program. They might want to enroll in the co-op program if they want to earn the technical elective credit or elective credit, but if they don't need the credits, then they don't need to enroll in the courses. They can just do the co-op on their own. So that is all that I have for the presentation at this time, but please connect with me. This is the co-op email address. I'm happy to answer questions at any point from this presentation or otherwise, and thanks for listening.